Kal Kadosh Boker Tov. We're going to be continuing today on Daf Samech Daled 64a1. So we were speaking about the Shita of Abaye, that Abaye said that if right now you had two Jews in a Chatzer living with a Goy, and the Goy does not want to rent out his property, which means that I cannot do Shituvei Muvot with him. I cannot combine together, and then what's going to happen is I can't carry. So what are you supposed to do? Says Abaye, one Jew should annul his property to the other Jew, and by doing so, what's going to happen is that now they're going to be able to carry. So on the bottom of Samech Gimel Mubet, it just says, Ravuna went and he said, the psak of Abaye in front of Rava. Amarle, so Rava went and he told him, Samech Daled Amud Aleph on the top, 64a1, in Ken, if so, Bitalta Torat Eruv meoto mavui. You actually annulled the concept of the Eruv in that mavui, right? Why? Because in that private, you remember, a mavui is not the public domain. You have the chatzer, which is a courtyard where houses are in, and then you have a mavui, which is like a thoroughfare. It's like a side street. So now what happens is the goy, he's going to probably continue, right, rejecting, right, doing the eruv, and then what's going to happen is they can never do shitufei mivot with him. So you just annulled shitufei mivot. You just annulled eruv from that mavui. You just completely annulled it because one of them just annuls his property. V'gamarnu. So answers the Gemara, no, de me'arve, they still did an eruv. Meaning it wasn't that just one was annulling to the other and that's it. One was annulling to another and they still did the eruv. So they'll never forget the concept of the eruv. The only thing is the eruv doesn't help because the goy doesn't want to forgive on his property. He doesn't want to rent out his property. But, right, still they did an eruv, so it's not going to annul the concept of eruvim from there. So the Gemara is going to ask, Yomru eruv mo'im kom nochri. They're going to say 1 second, but then they're going to say that the eruv helps when there's a nochri, when there's a goy. And we know an eruv does not help when there's a goy. Okay? So answers the Gemara, the machrizina, that they announced it publicly. They made a public announcement, right, saying, right, that this is what's going on in order that everyone knows what's going on. Not that, that nobody should learn from it, right? You have to be very, very careful in everything that we do, that we don't want that people are going to learn from our mistakes, right, from what we're doing. Okay, so therefore it's very, very important. So the Gemara says, they came and they mentioned it to the children. Ela Marava, but rather Rava comes and he says, he says, right, because why? Because we're going to say that you're going to tell me that they had to mention it not to the people around, to all the children as well, because remember, the children are going to learn from the parents, and they're going to learn from everything that's going on. Ela Marava, but rather Rava says, right, one of them is going to go, the Karevle, he's going to become a friend of the Goy, the Lishol Mine Duchta, and he's going to ask a part of the Chatzer of the Goy, the Linech Bemide. And then what's going to happen is that he's going to put there something. Then he's going to become his Sachir and Lakit. So then he could do it. Which means that we're going to do a plan. We're going to do a trick. What's the trick? One Jew is going to become a very good friend to this person, right? He's going to ask him to borrow a place in his field. He's going to put something there. Now that he has that, now we could do it through him. And now we bypass the Goy. And then we're able to do it that way. Okay, so Amalei says by Yosef, what happens if they had 5 people in that house, right, from Bnei Yisrael? So what's the halacha? You need all 5 to do it, get it from all 5, or just from one of them? Amalei, he says to him, so to the that means we're going to do also to lenient and also to be machmir. So Gufa Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, it says Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel, afilu sechiro afilu lekito notenu lovo v'dayo. Right, even, right, the sechiro and even lekito, he's going to give his eruv, and that's already going to be enough. So Amar Rav Nachman says, Kama me'ali ashmata. How much does this help? Amar Rav Yehuda Shmuel says of Yehuda in the name of Shmuel, he says, Shatar Ravit yain. If a person comes and he drinks a ravit of wine, el al yoreh, he shouldn't paskin halacha. By the way, this, if you remember, I told you Rabbi Zimmerman from England, he was a rabbi of Gateshead, he never drank a ravit of wine. He only used grape juice for kiddush all year round. And the reason why is he said, well, since he's a rabbi of a city, right, or a rabbi that he has to paskin halachot, if he's going to drink a ravit wine, that's it, he can't paskin. That's what we just said here. Amar Rav Nachman, lo ma'ali hashmata dehana kol kama de lo shatin raviyata dechamra lo tzile datai. He says, but this doesn't help for us, because by us it's the opposite. They were so accustomed to wine that if they didn't drink a ravit of wine, they weren't able to paskin. It was the exact opposite by them. So Amalei Rava says, my time, what does he say that? What does it mean? right? The word here, zonot, is zuna'eh. Kol ha'omer zona'ah, which means that's why he's going to be roeh, right? Ve'ezu enuna'eh, and this is not going to be nice. Me'abed ona shel Torah, he's going to forget Torah. Which means if somebody comes and he says, this is nice, this is not like, I like Eiruvin, but I don't like Shabbat, or I like Shabbat, but I don't like Eiruvin, it's going to lose out. So Amalei, he says, Hadibi, you're right, I retracted on that. Now, I'm not going to say that anymore. So Amar Rav Huna, Shatuya litpalel. If somebody drank wine, he shouldn't pray. He mitpalel, but if he did pray, tfilatot tfilah, it is going to be tfilah. That means b'diavad, it's okay if he prayed that way. But a shikor, al yitpalel. Shatui just means that he's a little bit high, but he drank. Shikor means that he's drunk. He shouldn't pray. But if he did pray, tfilatot to'eva, it's an abomination. What's a shitur? What's shatui? What's shikor? So how come they were being niftarim one from another on a gesher, on a bridge, which was called Nar Yofte. Amru, they said, each one of us, we have to say something that we never heard. That means I'm going to tell you a chidush, you're going to tell me a chidush. Because remember, that's that we're going to say now. Just like Huna said, a person should always leave their friend with a dvar halacha. That's how he's always going to remember him. So one of them says, what is shatui? What is shikor? He says, shatui is kol sheyachol ledaber lifnei hamelech. Shatui means he could still speak in front of the king. Okay? And shikor is kol she'eino yachol ledaber lifnei. Shikor means he can't speak in front of the king. The other one said, when you say a ger, if somebody's going to grab upon the properties of a ger, how does it become his? Remember, a ger does not have any, unless he gets married after he converts, he doesn't have any family. So how does it work exactly? So he says, I find out a ger passes away, I'm going to run and grab his properties, I want to keep it. But how do I do it? So he says, Yikach bahen sefer Torah. He says, if you want it, buy a sefer Torah right away. And because of that, everything else will stay in your hands. Why? Because if not, you have Ainira. Which means if a person gets a Yerusha, an inheritance, and they get a lot of money in one shot, people are going to give them Ainira. So how do you stop the Ainira? Very simple. You give it to tzedakah. By giving it to tzedakah right away, you give part of the money. You don't have to give everything. You give part of the money to tzedakah, so then the rest will stay in your hands. Amar of Sheshat says, Sheshat, afilu ba'al b'nisei ishto. This happens on Samech Daled Mubet, 64b. This happens even by a husband in the properties of his wife. Yeah, also he should do the same thing, right? Because it causes Ainara. So Rava says, afilu avad iska v'revach. Even if you worked and you made money on a deal, a business deal, same thing. Right? That means even though you were the one that worked on it, it didn't just come easily. You worked for it and you made a lot of money. Still, make sure that you give a lot of money to the tzedakah. It doesn't say how much. He just said to give a sefer Torah. And the schar of that mitzvah would help you. Now remember, sefer Torah, even nowadays, costs 40 to 50 grand. You understand? So, but again, it doesn't actually say how much is the percentage, but you have to give. Obviously, we're not talking about the 10%, but that's the minimum. You understand? The best is 20%. Because that's the maaser according to the Gaon Mivimna. You have to do 20%. So he says, Rava says, even if you Papa says, even if you found a mitziyah, which means even if you found something, the same thing. Meaning, let's say I found $100,000. No. Even as a mitziyah, you should give part of it to tzedakah. So that way people will not come and put in it.
But you don't need, Rav, you don't need to give the 10% minimum at least.
That's why I just said 10% minimum is minimum. The best is 20%, is according to the Gaon Mivina, 20% is maaser, and that's when you're going to get the avtacha of becoming rich. Meaning the concept of aser b'shul shetit asher is when you give 20%, not 10%. Now, but besides that, here we're talking about something different. This is a different halacha. This is talking about halacha that a person comes and they get, whether it's a mitziyah or they got a yerusha, which means they found something, they got an inheritance, or they worked for it and all of a sudden they got a lot of money. So people are going to give them the ocho, the eye, the ainera. So how do you get out of ainera? You give a big portion to tzedakah. It doesn't say how much percentage. It doesn't say. Right? You just give a big portion to the tzedakah. Okay? So he says, Amar of Nachman, even tefillin. It doesn't have to be dafka, a sefer Torah. It could be even tefillin for himself. The Amar of Chanin, Vitem of Chanina, Sasser of Chanin, Sasser of Chanina. Micra, what's the pasuk? How do we learn this? Which means that if I'm going to come and I'm going to conquer all these cities, immediately I'm going to give a cherem to the Hekdesh. I'm going to give a part of it to the property to the Hekdesh, which means that's where we learn it from. But we learn that immediately I'm going to get I'm going to start getting a whole bunch of properties. Well, here we're talking about I'm going out to war and I'm winning a battle and still I'm going to conquer and I'm going to get booty. Still, give it to the Daddy San Neder Lemon. Amar Rabbi Abba says Rabbi Abba, Rami Barabba, Derech mil v'chen shena kol shu mafgin et einayin. If a person is going to walk for a meal or sleeping, it's going to take away the effect of the wine. Amar Rav Nachman lo shanu ela shita revit. That's only if you drank a revit. But if you drank more than a revit, kol sheken derech tarato v'shena mishkato. The opposite. If you drank a lot of wine and now you're going to start sleeping, it's going to make you more drunk. Or you're going to start walking, it's going to make you more drunk. So says the Gemara, derech mil mefiga yain. What? The walking for a meal, it's going to take away the effect of the wine. That Tanya we learn, Masechet Gamliel was riding on a donkey. He was going from Akko to Gziv. Rabbi was behind him. He found bread on the way. Amarlo, and he told him, Ilai, go take the bread. Then he found a goy. Amarlo, mivgai tol gluskin lalu. Milai, take these breads from Milai. Itpallo, Bilai. Right? Amarlo, where are you from? Amarlo, he says, from the cities where they live in these like huts. What's your name? Mavgai Shemini. Mavgai is my name. He says, what, did Gamliel ever know you? Amarlo, he said, lo. So he was trying to say, what's going on here? Yeah? So be'ota sha'a lamanu, so from there we learned, shekiven Gamliel b'ruach HaKodesh, he knew ruach HaKodesh, three things, shosha dvarim. Be'ota sha'a. Number one, lamanu she'en ma'avinin lo'ochen, you never pass by food. Right? That means if you find food, you have to pick it up. Don't just leave it on the floor. Right? You find food on the floor, it doesn't matter where it is. You pick it up. Never leave food on the floor. That's number one. Because that's what he told Rabbi Lai. Yeah? Okay? That's what Rabbi Gamliel told Rabbi Lai. Number two, we go after the majority of people. Who are the majority of people? Goyim. So therefore, right, how do we know whether it's going to be permitted in eating or not? Since the majority of people are Goyim, pat goy is asur to eat. So since you're not allowed to eat goy's bread, right, just like you're not allowed to drink goy's wine, you're not allowed to eat the goy's bread. So therefore he said, that's it. You found it, take it, but now you can't eat it, so give it to the goy. And the goy was going to eat it. Number three, chametz that belongs to a goy after Pesach is mutar bana'ah, which means this chametz on Pesach is a sur bana'ah. You're not allowed to benefit from it. And I'm not allowed to benefit it on Pesach. But after Pesach, I'm allowed to eat it immediately. That's why I'm allowed to buy from Publix, Walmart, all these places. I'm allowed to buy bread, whiskey, beer, whatever you want, immediately motzei Pesach. No problem. Why? It's goy's chametz. Goy's chametz, I'm allowed to benefit from it immediately after Pesach. Okay, so so those were the three things.
If
the
bag of the bread says OU, it's okay to buy it, right? Not because it's goy, it's not goy. If it's a bag, it says OU on the bag.
No, if it says OU, it just means that it's kosher, but it's still pat paltar, which means that a lot of opinions hold that it's still a sur. You're only allowed to eat it if you don't have other bread. For example, if you go to, I don't know where, Honolulu.
He's asking about the fact that the store is a Jew.
Oh, sorry, I didn't understand. You're talking about that the store is a Jew? You're talking about an OU bread in Publix.
The OU bread in Publix.
No, OU bread in Publix is called pat paltar. Unless it's Annie's bread or something like that, and it says pat Israel, you understand? It's pat paltar. Pat paltar means that a goy was the one that baked it from the beginning to the end without any Jewish input in it. Usually a Jew has to turn on the oven or throw in sticks or like fuel in order for it to happen.
Turn on the oven.
Pat Israel. But if not, it's pat paltar. So for example, rolling pin is owned by goyim. However, though, Rabbi Spitz goes every single time and he turns on the oven and he'll come and he'll throw in some wood or something to make sure that's pat Israel. I mean, since the Jew had something to do with the baking, so from then on it permits the baking. So now it becomes pat Israel. You're allowed to eat it without any problem. But for me to go to Publix and buy bread, which is OU, if it does not say pat Israel, so then that's called pat paltar. Pat paltar, I'm not allowed to eat from it unless you're stuck in a place where there's no pat Israel. You understand? That's pat paltar. Now, if it was pat balabait, which means your goy, your neighbor goy baked it in his house and he gave it to you, that's called pat goy, patakum, that's for sure asur. There's nobody that would permit it. You understand? No. So there's pat goy, patakum, pat paltar, which means it's made by a bakery or by a lot of people. So there's less suspicion that you're going to get married to the daughters, but it's not pat Israel. And then there's pat Israel, which that's the kosher bread. So when the OU put their OU on it, they
Right.
just meant that there's not going to be a pig in that bread, but that it's not that it's Pat Israel.
So in some instance, we cannot stress OU also in some instance. Like this instance, for
It's
example,
not that
we
you
cannot
can't.
stress OU then.
It's not that you can't trust it, but for example, as I said, if you go to some Georgia and I don't know where you go to, and there's no bread whatsoever, no bread of Pat Israel, so then you do have a permission to get papaltar if there's no Pat Israel around. You understand? Because at the end of the day, and if it has OU, so you know it's kosher, so that's good. But again, only in a place where you don't have Pat Israel. If you have Pat Israel, you have to have Pat Israel. Capish? Okay? So then it says, Kevin Shegia Lechziv, once he gave to Chziv, Bayachal Ishel Nidro, somebody came to permit his neder. Amar Lezei Shayimo, so he told Rabbi Lai, Klum Shenatnu Revi'it Yain Italki. He says, what? Did we drink wine? Italian wine? Amalo, he said, hen, yes. Im ken yitayel, lacharenu at. He says, okay, come after us. So they started walking around. They travel 3 meals. Remember, every meal is like a kilometer. Right? It's like 18 minutes of walking. So they traveled 3 meals. Until they came to this place. Then he did Atarat Nedarim. And there also we learned a lot of things from his actions. So remember, from one little action, look how many things that you learn from it. We learn that even one revi'it of Italian wine makes a person drunk. Lamanu number 2, right? Shikor al yored, that a person that's drunk should not be posek halacha. Number 3, lamanu she'derech mefiga et yain, that if you walk, it takes away the potent of the wine. It takes away the strength of the wine. Number 4, lamanu she'mefrin nadarim lo rachu v'lo me'alech v'lo omed heyoshev. Also, we don't do hafarat nedarim, not riding on a camel, not walking, not standing, ela yoshev, but rather sitting. Wow, that's halacha. I just learned that halacha now. Yeah, it's true. When we do Atarat Nedarim in the synagogue, we sit. But I thought when we do Atarat Nedarim normally, I thought that you could do it walking or standing. Here it's written mefurash. We have to check it up in the Shulchan Aruch, but here it's written mefurash. Nothing. Yeah, mamash, you have to be sitting down. You cannot do Atarat Nedarim in any other way. You saw he was riding on the chamor.
The 2 groups, the judges and also the group asking for.
No. The one asking does not need to. The one doing the Farat Nedarim. The one
we
doing
do all the time. We will sit down all the time. We always sit down.
No, we sit down. We are the judges that are sitting down.
Yeah, the judges, yeah.
Yeah, so the judges have to sit down. The ones that are annulling the vow.
That's what we've been doing. That's what it says over here, no?
No, here we're talking about the judges. So the judges cannot do it. No, we sit down 100%. That's what I said. We usually sit down for Atarat Nedarim. But I'm talking about, for example, let's say we're not doing the communal Atarat Nedarim. Let's say you come to me and you tell me, listen, right, I went and I made a certain neder and I want to take it away. Yeah, so what you're allowed to do is that you're allowed to do it with 3 rabbanim, right? So, but I would tell you, no, you don't have to do it that way. You could do it, no problem. Yeah, that means you have to actually sit down for it. It's not a standing up. Okay? So, ktani miyad, but we learn from you, though, it has to be 3 meals, not 1 meal, 3 meal. So, answer, shani yayin italki de mishkatfeh. Yain italki is so different because it's mishaker even more. It's more, makes a person more drunk. Ve'amar Rav Nachman amar Ravua, lo shanu ela sheshata revi'it, aval sheta yoter revi'it, that's only if you drank a revi'it. But if you drank more than a revi'it, kol sheken derech torah tov v'shchina v'shekado. More, it's going to make it even worse. That the derech is going to make him even more drunk and the sleeping is going to make him more rachuv jani. So the Gemara answered, no. There he was riding. So since he was riding, right, it's actually going to be different than walking. Because since when you're riding, it's not the same as walking. So therefore, walking does not take it away, right, more than a revi'it, right? But he says, but riding does. Okay? Benada, you just told me that riding is different than walking. On a question. Because again, it's different. Right? Because again, why did he have to say that it was 3 meal? He was riding. That's why you needed 3 meal. So says the Gemara, is it so? Here it says mefurash. You're allowed to do a farat nedarim, whether you're riding, walking, or standing. You could whichever way. So answers the Gemara, you're right. It's a machlokot tanaim. It all depends according to mandama, which is the potchim becharata or not. That's why I told you I wanted to check the halacha, whether you're allowed to or not. I saw my rabbi doing it walking, but again, I prefer looking it up. It's in Yoreh De'ah, Siman Resh Kavchet Siv Dalet. So I'm going to believe that afterwards we're going to check the halacha. Okay. What did Rabbi Gamliel open for this person? So he says, "Yesh bote kemadrekot cherev lushan chachamim alpeh. Kol habote ra'ui v'dokro cherev." Anybody that's going to come and say a neder, so it's like, and if he's not going to be mekayim his neder, so therefore it's like that. It's a dokro becherev. They should stab him with a sword. Ela sheloshon chachamim alpeh, but rather the lashon chachamim to do a tanan nedarim is a cure. Okay, so therefore that means basically, if you would have known that it's a sur to make nedarim, that you're going to be chayav mitah, would you have made the neder? So obviously the guy's going to answer no. So that's why he was able to save him. Okay, so that was what he opened it up, and that's why he was able to do it this way. You're not supposed to pass by food. That's only in the olden times. That the Benot Israel were not prutzot and kshafim. They wouldn't be doing witchcraft. But in the next time they would do it. Why? Because they would do witchcraft on the food and leave it there purposely. The second that you pick it up, you have witchcraft. Right? There's a whole bunch of different, witchcraft that they used to do. So it says Tana, we learn Shelemim Mavinim. If it's going to be whole food, right? Not whole foods, whole food, right? Then, right, Mavinim, you could actually walk by it. But then it could be that there's problems with witchcraft. But if it's going to be small pieces of bread, Mavinim, you don't do it. Because they don't do witchcraft on that. So Amal Ravasi, Vabatim of them what? They don't do it on small pieces of bread. Even on Petite Lechem. So answers the Gemara, Deshakli Bagraihu. No, they took it only if they take it for their wages, which means that they took wages, but not the behemet that they do the witchcraft on that. Okay, Amar of Sheshat, Mishum Elazar Nazar, Nazariah, Yachol ani liftor Samechia Mudalef 65A1, Yachol ani liftor Kulam Minadin. I can exempt the entire world from judgment. From the time the Bet Midrash was started until now, which means that Navi is coming and saying that since we're going to become like shikorim in the galut, because we have so much of the problems of the suffering and the exile, we are like shikorim, and therefore we can't be taken into account because of our punishments. Obviously, we'll continue to understand what it means, but that's what we're saying. Have a wonderful day.